Ready to go.
Good evening. This is the ordinary meeting of the Council on the 30th of November 2021, held via hybrid technology and in the Council chambers. I now hand you over to our CEO, Dr. Rosemary Dillon.
Good evening, councillors and staff. Welcome to this last ordinary meeting of the Blue Mountain City Council for 2021. I would like to advise members of the public that registration to speak is now closed and only the Mayor has discretion to accept late speakers under the Code of Meeting Practice. This meeting is being recorded and will be live streamed. An audio file and a link to a live stream is available from the Council's website. The audio recording will be available on the Council's website for 12 months after the upload date. As all statements made at this meeting will be recorded, your image and voice may be recognised and other people may be aware that you have attended this meeting. So your continued attendance at this meeting after this statement is made is taken as your consent to your image and voice being webcast. All persons in attendance at this meeting, whether addressing the Council or making comments that may be detected by the recording equipment, should refrain from making any defamatory comments or from releasing any personal or confidential information about another individual without that other individual's consent. The Council is not responsible for the statements of any individual made during this meeting. Any defamatory statements or any statements which include personal or confidential information are the sole responsibility of the individual who makes them. The Council's Code of Meeting Practice sets standards of conduct for a meeting, for a council meeting, and if any person in attendance at the meeting acts in a disorderly manner, or if a person makes defamatory or unacceptable comments, then the meeting may be interrupted by the Mayor or by me, the Chief Executive Officer, and appropriate action taken. This meeting must not be recorded by any party other than the Council. Should the chambers need to be vacated for any reason, I'd really appreciate if you'd follow the directions of Council staff. I now ask you to please welcome our Mayor, Mark Greenhill.
Councillors, there'll be a procedural motion in a moment, but I'll ask you not to stand. We normally would these meetings, but the community will get a view of your midsection as opposed to your face. So you remain seated, please. Dear God, we sincerely seek your blessing on this council so that its deliberations may advance your glory and the true welfare of the City of Blue Mountains. The City of Blue Mountains is located within the country of the Darug and Gundungurra peoples. The Blue Mountain City Council recognises that Darug and Gundungurra traditional owners have a continuous and deep connection to their country, and this is a great cultural significance to Aboriginal people, both locally and in the region. For Darug and Gundungurra people, Umara takes in everything within the physical, cultural and spiritual landscape. Landforms, waters, air, trees, rocks, plants, animals, foods, medicines, minerals, stories and special places. It also includes cultural practice, kinship, knowledge, songs, stories and art, as well as spiritual beings and people, past, present and future. Blue Mountain City Council pays respect to elders, past and present, while recognising the strength, capacity and resilience of past and present Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the Blue Mountains region. Just a couple of things before I go through the formal parts of the business. We've got some feedback on the line. Firstly, the following rules apply to this council meeting. Social distancing. Remember the 2 square metres per person rule. So councillors are not in the usual seats and are distributed around the circle of the chambers to allow for this requirement. So please don't move your chairs or add chairs, including to the audience. Masks. All attendees, everyone in the room, must wear a mask. Councillors who are addressing the meeting in the debate may remove their mask to speak and then replace it straight after speaking. COVID check-in, I gather you've all checked in, QR code and showing your vaccination proof. Everyone attending tonight needs to do that. Please ensure that all devices within the room are switched off or on silent. Any other equipment may affect the sound recording, the microphone system we have in operation tonight. The microphone system is very, very sensitive. It will, and I want to say this to the audience as well, it is incredibly sensitive and it will detect voices on the other side of the room. So be very cautious as to what you say tonight, because it may well become part of the recording and we can't edit it. So we're picking up what you're saying in the audience. Councillor, the council will resolve a procedural motion in a moment to allow councillors to remain seated when entering the debate at this particular meeting, and this is due to the fixed camera locations. So I have a procedural motion moved by Councillor McGregor, seconded by Councillor Fernanda, that the council suspends the requirement for councillors to stand when addressing the meeting for this ordinary meeting, due to the meeting being recorded and live streamed using fixed cameras. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Thank you. Right. We have no apologies tonight. We have one councillor joining us via Zoom. The rest are present in the room. I'll move to confirm the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 26th of October. I'll put that. It's moved Councillor Fernanda, seconded Councillor McGregor. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Declarations of interest. I see I have a procedural motion here, do I? I've got written on my notes procedural motion. Does anyone know why?
That was for the seating.
The seating, perfect, thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations? There are none. Minutes by the Mayor. I believe we have none.
That's correct.
Let's turn up for the books. Councillor reports. We have the Harder-Billigo Committee annual report. Councillor Hollywood moves that report. That's seconded by Councillor Schreiber. Councillor Hollywood has the call.
Oh.
If you wish to speak to her, we can just move it.
I
You need to
just-
engage your mic.
I do use the microphone, sorry. Okay. Yes, I will keep this very brief because I know we want to get through this meeting and the valedictory speeches, but I would just like to acknowledge that this report comes at the end of 5 years and 3 months' work, and very proud I think our community and our council should be that we have managed over more than 15 years to maintain an enduring and meaningful friendship relationship with the community in Harder-Billigo. And I want to thank the committee members for their enduring work, but also all members of the community that support both the community organisations, such as Together for Timor, Blue Mountains East Timor Sisters, Springwood East Timor Group, support group, and many others. So in reading this report, I want to thank the members of the Friendship Committee and all of the community members that have supported this. And I look forward to the incoming committee that will be formed and the councillors that may step up and do it, going from strength to strength in the next term of council. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Schreiber, as secretary, are you happy to waive your right to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Schreiber. Anyone else wish to speak to this item? There's one matter before us. I'll put it all those in favour. Against, declare it carried unanimously. We'll now go through the business paper and remove those items we're content to pass in globo. Councillor Fell.
Items 8 and 14.
You wish to pull out items 8 and item 14. Any other councillors wish to pull out items? Councillor Schreiber.
6 and 9.
Councillor Schreiber pulls out number 6 and number 9. Any other councillors wish to pull items out?
Yep.
Councillor Brown.
Item number 10
Item 10
and item 2.
and item 2.
And it's supplementary, just this.
They're supplementary to the item in the business paper. Councillor Christie.
Item 5.
Item 5. Thank you.
Or a question.
For a question? Yes, thanks, Councillor Christie. What I'll do, Councillor Christie, is I'll take you to move it and you can ask your question in moving. Yep.
Yep, sounds good.
Thank you. Further items that councillors wish to call out? There are no further items? All right. I then have a motion to move items 3, 4, 7, S1, 12, 13 and 15. Moved Councillor Christie, seconded Councillor Vanderklay. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. That brings us to item number 2. Does anyone wish to move the item?
I'll move it.
Moved Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Christie. The end of term report and the recommendations as a resolution. Councillor Brown, has the floor.
Okay. Right. Okay, well, first of all, I think I just want to congratulate the staff and thank them for all the, the very long and hard work over a very long term. I suppose I say that to all the staff, but I suppose this is more about my personal experience. I particularly want to acknowledge the environmental planning staff, because I feel that that's been an area we've really done an enormous amount of work in this term of council, and also the cultural centre director, Paul Brinkman, and his staff. I think the work we've done on expanding the City of the Arts profile of the council has been really fantastic. That the art is now coming out of the sort of the centre and into the streets and into the public spaces more, and I think that's been a really important development. And also to the waste management and all the work that's been done. It's been particularly important to me, which is toward being carbon neutral by 2025, and to feel that we've made such incredible strides on that front. I appreciate that both the councillors and the staff all supported my motion to actually have a target for being carbon neutral. And I think what's really fantastic to see is that we didn't just set that target, it's actually going to be achieved. And that's well ahead of a lot of targets set by other levels of government. So I think that's a credit to this council and to its going beyond just saying that we are, city in the World Heritage Area and we're sustainable and that we're really doing it in a committed way now. So I acknowledge the work of the staff and of the councillors in supporting that. I'll probably talk about it a bit more when we get to the Katoomba Master Plan, but I'll just say, I also, on that front, I'd like to say that with the Planetary Health Initiative, which I have supported and continue to support, and I'm very pleased to see now some of the minutes and notes and presentations that have been developed by the Advisory Committee and the project officer, Liz Bastian. So I think that's an exciting development in this council, and the commitment of the council to buy the land we needed to turn the Katoomba Golf Course back to into a place for planetary health. And what I would just like to say on that, though, is what is so important now, and this is sort of going forward. I'm not running for council, but I'd like to. This is, I think, such an important thing. We have this initiative, and what is going to be critical is that it is embedded in our local government area, and that's probably the thing where I believe that there's still work to be done, because we can't be a Disneyland, and I don't think that's intended. I can see that we've got very expert people coming in, and we will build hopefully a community commitment, but I think that the Planetary Health Initiative in the end needs to be something that is embedded in, as the rights of nature are, in everything we do. So as for instance with the something like glyphosate, I'm pleased that we do have now an annual report of research to reduce glyphosate in our weed management, but it's all those things that the planetary health, and I've had people laugh at me and say, which planet are we making healthy, or all of them, or just this one? And I think obviously really what we need to be doing is making our whole local government area the best practice. And I do think that's been a strong focus in this term of council. I also need to just say I also welcome the findings of the public inquiry, but I do think we have to acknowledge that the findings include non-compliance for 5 years, but we have become a council that now has both been the canary in the mine for other councils to understand how important it is to get their asbestos management and their safety management right. And I believe that we are now moving toward being, a really safe council with great safety systems. So that's another achievement, I think, of this council for all the drama.
Councillor's time has expired. Any further councillors wish to speak to the matter the second day? No? All right, there's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declared carried unanimously. Item number 5, it's moved Councillor Christie, seconded Councillor Miles. Councillor Christie with a question.
Red means on, right?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Question to you, Mr. Mayor, to the CEO, to the relevant staff. On page 46, it notes that funds for the Knapsack Park upgrade have been transferred to Grants Reserve. I just want to know why we're transferring money from the project to reserves.
Through me to the CEO, the relevant member of staff, could we explain that, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Ms Rysack?
Through the CEO, this project is extending over 2 years, so that money is going back into the grants reserve until it's required in the following year.
A follow-up from me, that money is earmarked solely for that project, I take it?
Yes, it is.
Councillor Christie, any further?
Follow up on that, it can't be spent. There's absolutely no way that money can be spent on anything other than Knapsack Park upgrade.
To the CEO, Ms Rysack?
That's correct.
Yes.
One last one on the same item. This doesn't cause any further delays or anything to the project.
CEO?
I don't think there's any delays, Mr Mayor. I think it's just a staged and planned project.
Yes. Fantastic. Happy days.
One matter before us, I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 6, who withdrew this? Councillor Schreiber, you wish to move it?
I'll move the item, Mr Mayor, and then I want to speak to it.
Yes, moved Councillor Schreiber, seconded Councillor Brown. Councillor Schreiber has the call. Item 6.
On page 49, Mr Mayor, it has lead inspiring leadership with a great array of businesses and things that we have done. I noticed left out of it is the mayoral reference group for small business. I do not understand why that is not in there, because the work that group did during the COVID with the help of this council, helping fund small businesses to keep going, and with that not included in there, I see that as a very important item not put in there.
Thanks, Councillor Schreiber. CEO, are we able to take it that you will include a reference to the work done by that group, in particular its leadership role in the post-fire period in our recovery?
Absolutely, Mr Mayor. I think it is a significant oversight. We did mention supporting recovery of local business, but we should have mentioned that very important and successful mayoral reference group for business.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think with it, through you to the General Manager.
This is now a question to clock and stop.
Through you, Mr Mayor, to the General Manager.
Go back to 0.
If it could be added in there, General Manager, of the funding that this council gave from its budget to help those small business and the people who are leasing our properties through this very, very trying time, whereabouts we came forth to do work and set an example to other local government areas.
CEO, we ought to take that on board, please.
Yes, Mr Mayor, we will take that on board.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Kua.
Yeah, in a similar vein, please correct me if I'm wrong, but
Firstly, Councillor Kua, has been 5 years. How are you addressing me? By way of question or is it?
Oh, just a question.
As a question. Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, just wondering if we might also be able to add, if it's not already in there, some reference to the city's power partnership and a tremendously significant strategic partner alliance that has delivered great dividends to the city. I'm not sure is in the report.
Yeah, okay. CEO, if you could take that on board as well.
We'll take that on board. I think it is referenced, but we'll check. If it's not, we will add it
I
in.
think I've read it in there, but if it's not, we'll make sure it is.
I may have missed it.
But if it's not in there, it will be. Yeah. Thanks, Councillor, and it is an important issue. Councillor Fernando, do you wish to speak or do you wish to ask a question?
I would like to ask the question, please.
Yes.
To you, CEO. Similar vein, I think that the mayoral reference group for the wildlife recovery should be noted in this. It's one of a kind. I do not know of any other councils who have gone through adversity in natural disasters who have considered the welfare of the animals in times of emergency. And I think the mayoral reference group to that group should be noted for the tremendous work that all those people who were on the committee contributed to look at future strategic planning, to look at the rescue of animals and protection of animals through natural disaster.
Yes. CEO, are you happy to take it on board as well?
Yes, Mr Mayor, definitely.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Fernando. Anything further, councillors? One matter before us. Yep, Councillor Brown.
First of all, I've got a few questions. Can I just ask, are there no environmental upgrades because we don't do them, or is, I just noticed that we didn't have any. Do we offer it?
Mr Mayor, could Councillor Brown clarify which part of the annual report she's referring to or what the question is?
Sorry, I'll have to go to the page. It's environmental upgrade agreements on page 164.
Page 164, CEO.
Okay. 164 of the actual annual report.
Yes.
1 minute. Okay. Mr Mayor, I will cross-refer to the Director of Environment and Planning, but what the annual report says on 164 is that there were no environmental upgrade agreements in place during 2020-21. And I believe that's probably a statutory reporting requirement that needs to go in the annual report. But Mr Langford, can you shed any light?
We'll hear from the Director. Thanks, Mr Langford.
Yeah, through the CEO. Yeah, I'm not aware of any upgrade occurring in the period, and that's all I can say at this stage. If you wanted to understand why we didn't do one in the period, I have to take that on notice. But it's as far as I'm quite confident, in fact, that there were none of the upgrade reports done in the period.
Yeah, I mean, I might.
Councillor Brown, are there another question through the chair?
Well, I think the question is, yes, can I have information whether we in fact offer it? Because I think it has to be set up as...
So, Councillor Brown, just ask a question. You would like that information provided to you in the days you have left? It will be.
Do you mean the days I have left as a councillor? Or
correct. No, as a councillor.
Oh, thank you. Okay, and another question. It's just about the environmental impact statement for the Blackheath landfill site, which it's now over 2 years since we, for the remediation of the asbestos there. What's the schedule on that?
CEO.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Councillor Brown, you did previously, I guess maybe 2 months ago or so, request that information and we provided an update. What I'll do is I will further check with staff whether there's been any change from the previous response we gave you, and I'll send you that in the next coming day or two. In the meantime, I will just cross-check whether Mr Langeveld or Mr Rorder would like to make a comment, and I think Mr Langeveld, you would like to make a comment. Thank you.
Yeah, through the CEO. What Councillor Brown is referring to is the stage 2 remediation of the former Blackheath landfill site, which ceased operation in 1989. There are a number of complex issues in relation to that site. Most noteworthy is that part of the landfill is on land owned by the Aboriginal Land Council. So what we're reviewing is how that can be managed with the Crown. So we'll be making representations on that informed by advice. In terms of the EIS, the SEARS, which are the Secretary's requirements, have been provided, and we're working toward that with the consultants. But what we'll be doing is, just as part of the due diligence of that, in preparing that application, the EIS, which will be the basis of the development application, we're just doing that other due diligence work, which I'm currently working through with Mr. Rorter and working through with Council Solicitor.
Just one more question on
Through
that.
the Chair, yep.
To the Chair. With all this rain and, you know, the impact obviously it has on land and movement of land, are we satisfied or have that the, because it's near a waterway, I'm conscious that it's going into the bush and it's near waterways, are we happy or confident that the asbestos is not sort of moving or not going anywhere into the bush or into the waterways? Is that something that we've looked at?
CEO, through you, the relevant staff member.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Yes, Councillor Brown, I'm satisfied that we're regularly monitoring the condition of that site.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Brown, anything further? Are the councillors?
Yeah, I know. One more question. The surplus cash that we've got a surplus. Is that? Am I correct that that's actually because the surplus really comes from money we have coming for grants and so on that haven't actually been used yet, or is that where the operating surplus comes from?
CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Brown, the overall financial result for 2020-2021 was an operating deficit of approximately, I think, 400,000. But I'll hand over to Ms. Ryzak to clarify what you might be referring to with surplus cash.
Councillor Brown.
Through the CEO, there isn't any surplus cash during the year. If we have a surplus operating result, which we didn't in this particular year, that isn't a cash surplus. That's just the difference between operating income minus expenditure, as opposed to what we're spending on our capital. But it has balanced during the year.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Okay, I will just speak briefly.
Well, Councillor Brown, you're seeking the call.
I am seeking the call, yes.
Okay, we'll start the clock.
Thank you. Look, I've raised this before, and so I'm really coming around to it again, which is the little figure that worries me has improved, but it's on page 96, and it's our issue of our building and infrastructure renewal ratio on around about $1 billion of assets. The General Manager, the CEO, has provided me with figures for the last, well, actually 6 years, which shows that we've been averaging around about, I think, 35% of renewal, which is the recommended is minimum is 100%. So I can see we've increased to 56%, but I consider this one of the key issues for the council, that all our assets, this is our roads, our bridges, the culvert and Lura Cascades, all these things, the need to maintain, which apparently is 100%, and I'd probably query that, but also to renew them. And with our infrastructure, it is ageing. And when we got the special rate variation, one of the issues raised was that the previous councils hadn't invested enough in the infrastructure, so it wasn't, there was a backlog of poor condition. And what is concerning me is that we should be running at, I believe, at least a minimum of 100%. And I think because of the pressures we have on not so much growth in our population, but growth in our tourism, as well as ageing infrastructure, if anything, we need to be above that 100%. So I feel this is something that needs to be top of mind and a priority as the council goes forward. And on that, my personal view is that when we talk about borrowing responsibly, I think that, you know, once things start to fall apart, they're much more expensive and there's much more risk involved. So I think the council needs to consider in the next term that borrowing against future special rate variation income needs to be looked at much more closely, particularly while interest rates are so low. And we have to remember that it's great to do, we have a lot of briefings on parks and we've had lots and lots of briefings on many parks and so on, but we have to keep the council needs to keep its eye on the ball in terms of all the public spaces. And so of course the biggest ones are really our roads and our drains. And we are on a watershed. Sane societies don't build on watersheds, but our culture and our society decided to build on the watershed of the mountains. So there is, when we talk about flooding, we have to accept that we've put ourselves in a place where that is always going to be an issue. So can't be surprised. And, you know, in other words, we need to plan for it and I think budget for it, and that renewal to make sure that we are managing it. And again, Laura Cascades to me is the example where it's the culvert, it's not the landslide, it's the culvert, and that's a major renewal. And I think if we can get a grant for it, good. But otherwise, we can't have a major link road there, for instance, closed for years. This is going to be something like that. We need to be, I think the council needs to start looking at doing a business plan and showing how important it is to renew infrastructure and to not let things get to the point where they're collapsing. So that's, I do support this report, but I do think that that's a figure that needs to be focused on. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? One matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. The next item is moved Councillor McGregor, item 8, seconded Councillor Fell, City of the Arts Trust Advisory Committee member appointment. Councillor McGregor, did you wish to speak to this?
Yes, Mr Mayor, thank you. I just wish to thank the council for giving me the pleasure and the honour of having chaired the City of the Arts Trust for the last nearly 8 years. It's been one of the greater pleasures I've had in serving on this council, and I will miss the intellectual stimulation that comes from it. I've been impressed over that 8 years with the depth of knowledge and experience of the assessment panel. There are all of the assessment panels, and there must be 20 or 30 people who've served on them over that 8 years that have been extraordinarily skilled. And their willingness to share that knowledge and skill for the benefit of this burgeoning sort of arts community that we've got in Blue Mountains is something that should be acknowledged by the council, I think. And lastly, I'd like to acknowledge the enormous contribution that Lynn Mount Stevens, who was our previous Arts and Cultural Officer, brought to that job, and wish her replacement, Katrina Norbergen, the best of luck and carry on that great work. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Fell.
Just as a seconder of this motion, I'd echo all the comments that have been made by Councillor McGregor. It's a great committee, and as he points out, there's been 20 or more really strong members of that committee who served on it and served very well. I'd just like to add, in my capacity as chair of the Cultural Centre Advisory Committee, my thanks to Councillor McGregor. Thanks on behalf of the council for your role in that committee. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Fell. Anyone else wish to speak? No? All right, there's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Who pulled out item number 9? Councillor Schreiber, you wish to move something?
That's a recommendation as per the business statement.
Yes, it's moved Councillor Schreiber, seconded Councillor Fernanda. Councillor Schreiber has the call.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Questions through you to the General Manager.
Questions, no timing. Thank you. Questions, Councillor Schreiber.
With the exhibition of the draft plans of management for the Blackheath Memorial Park, these have been some time in the making. Can I please be informed, when do they expect this will be done, and when will the Memorial Park be upgraded? As it's been some 5 years in the making, Mr Mayor.
CEO, you've heard the question.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just checking, I would like to check whether Director Toomey is more familiar with the dates, or else whether Director Rorder would like to answer. I'll go first to Director Toomey.
Through the CEO, this report is requesting to place these documents on public exhibition for the public exhibition period. We will take all community feedback over the next 2 months, and these reports will come back before the council with community feedback in February. In terms of the 2 different projects in train for the Blackheath Soldiers Memorial Park, the pathway and toilet block contract has been let, and so works will begin on that project very soon. And there's also further works planned where there'll be public consultation in the new year.
Thank you. Councillor Schreiber, you're content?
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. There's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Item number 10. Councillor Brown, would you want to move something?
Well, I'll move the motion.
You moved the recommendations as a motion. Move Councillor Brown, seconded Councillor McGregor. Councillor Brown has the call.
Well, can I first of all, just before we start, there's just 2 corrections.
Yes, okay. Before we start the clock, 2 corrections.
One, it should be the Katoomba Chamber of Commerce and Community.
Yes.
That's quite important because at least 50% of the members are not business. And I also noticed the mayoral reference group is in here somewhere. It doesn't say which one or both.
Yes. Did we note that it's both? Or the relevant one? Yes.
I imagine it would be both.
Yeah, I think so too, Councillor Brown. I think we'll just note that it's both.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown, do you wish to speak now?
Yes, I do.
We'll start the clock. Councillor
Okay.
Brown has the call.
I'm pleased to see this and to see that we are progressing. I know they're sort of confidential because they're draft, but I was also very interested in the thinking that is developing, and I think that the ideas behind it, which is trying to ground it very strongly in this community and this place, are absolutely the right way to go. I would encourage the council. Up till now, the way it's been working is unprecedented. Only one councillor is allowed to go to attend the advisory committee, which, given that all councillors represent the community, I believe that all councillors should be able to attend those meetings. That's the norm, and I think that needs to be this, because the elected representatives should be able to be part of those meetings. They don't necessarily have to vote or anything, but they to hear the deliberations. Just note that, and I do go back to my points. I think with Planetary Health, it is going to be important. We sort of launched at this because of a property coming back up, the clubhouse that the council had sold some years ago, and needing to get it back as a sort of base camp. So I think we therefore didn't do what we would normally be doing, which was developing the business plan first, and in a way that's coming now, which is the circumstances. But I do think, along with some wonderful ideas, some wonderful initiatives, looking at the economic streams, as I've said before, is important, and how it's sustained as economically as well. And also the idea that Planetary Health is then not just at the Katoomba Golf Course, which would be great to showcase it there, but that wherever any visiting or living goes in our local government area, they are seeing us do best practice. Now that's, I know, a high call, but I think that's, to make it credible, that's so important now. It's like we've raised the bar for ourselves by this initiative. So I said I am very supportive of it, but I think it's now incredibly important that that it doesn't just become focused there, or that so much energy goes there that other things get overlooked that are actually, because drainage is really important to the health of the World Heritage Area, and so we have to remember those things as well. And I understand we've withdrawn the Ballura Area Traffic Management Plan, very disappointing for me, because of 5 years of work on that with the community, a huge amount of work, hundreds of hours for me, and it's been withdrawn because there's still work to be done on it, or some reviewing to be done. And for me, we have to be careful that things as important as area traffic management plan, really important again to people's health and the planet's health, that those things don't get lost on, I suppose, the excitement of this. So I really support it, but I think got to keep it in perspective and make sure that it's embedded in our whole local government area. But I congratulate the staff for, being adventurous and taking this on. And I congratulate the councillors for all supporting it. Thank you.
Councillor McGregor.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd ask the staff if it was possible to add to the stakeholder group that includes the residents of those escarpment houses near the golf course. That they add the Stewarts Road Action Group to that stakeholder group. They're heavily involved in protecting the nearby hanging swamp and the tributaries to the Bumba River. I think that'd be worthwhile.
Yes, thank you. CEO, you know the comments that the councillor just made?
Mr. Mayor, I have, and we will include them as a stakeholder group. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. All right. Any other speakers on this item? There being none, I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Item number 14. It's moved Councillor Fernandez, seconded Councillor Hollywood. Councillor Hollywood, I think you'll be happy to let Councillor Fernandez move it on her last night. But I'm content with whichever order you want to speak in.
You go.
Councillor Fernandez has the call.
Thank you. As you know, Mr. Mayor and staff and councillors, this is one area where Councillor Hollywood and I have been strong advocates for improving the conditions and the representation of women in local government. I couldn't be prouder actually of all the work and advocacy that Councillor Hollywood has put into this, and I have no doubt that she'll be elected again and she'll carry this forward for us and be a strong voice for women in local government. I certainly do understand the difficulties that women face to be in elected positions in government. Might get a bit teary. As a woman who works and who has been raising a family during this term, I certainly understand the challenges that women do face in public office. And it is quite difficult because a lot of the onuses are put on women to be the family supporter, not just financially to contribute, but also raising family and children and being the ones that are always there for them. So I can easily see how women are challenged by this, and probably in my circumstances are put off by running for local government, because it's a very big juggling act and there is not enough support there. And there is not enough financial support either, really. I still think with all the work that councillors do, sometimes, even though it's not always about the money, but for women in particular, there's a big decision to make, is to whether to pursue work full time, as well as then trying to juggle being in public office, and then you have your family. I'm very lucky. I've had 3 most tremendous children, 2 of them here tonight, who have supported me in this term unconditionally. They've always been proud. They've never complained when I've had to attend meetings, when I've had to go to events. I have been very blessed to have 3 children who have empowered me to be who I want to be in public office. But I can see how difficult this is for women who are trying to raise a family and who are trying to work. There are too many challenges and this needs to be addressed. And as I said, I have no doubt that Councillor Hollywood is going to be that strong voice for women in local government. And I couldn't be prouder. Thank you for all the work you've done.
Thank you, Councillor Fernanda. Councillor Hollywood.
Thank you, and I'm really humbled that Shay moved the motion. The reason I wanted to speak as well was I really wanted to pay tribute to Shay, to Councillor Fernanda. Because I can still remember, and I always will remember, us sitting at the local government women's conference down in Penrith, and there was a presentation particularly on how domestic, one of the councils, I think it was Penrith City Council, and the work that they were doing sort of as a backbone for community organisations, actually looking at how they can reduce domestic and family violence there. And Shay and I both looked at each other and realised we didn't actually Councillor Fernanda, sorry. But we realised that we didn't really have enough understanding ourselves of what our council was doing as a whole. And so from one motion to another, we've now, at the end of this council term, and I pay tribute to the support from Councillor Fernanda, and I will say something in a minute, that this is actually a great achievement for this term of council. And I also want to acknowledge Councillor McGregor as well, because whenever matters of domestic and family violence have come before this council in this place to be considered, I've always been so moved by the words and the passion that you have held and the regard for doing something about domestic and family violence, and your work on CAVA, and just your, it takes a whole community to solve this problem. It takes not just women, but also good men. And you are one of those good men. And you're going to be greatly missed around the table. So for me, there's much more to say about moving forward with this motion to Local Government New South Wales Conference, but I just want to remember and acknowledge your support and the contributions that you've made in this very important area. So
thank you. One matter before us, anyone else? Councillor Brown. You wish to speak or ask a question?
Sorry?
You wish to speak or ask a question?
I wish to speak.
Councillor Brown has the call.
Yes, I congratulate Councillor Hollywood and Councillor Fernanda for raising this and for keeping this on the agenda. I mean, certainly at the moment, we obviously don't have parity on the council yet. So we've had it in the past. We can look forward to that happening again, possibly even in the next coming term, because obviously that's sort of the baseline. I think it's been good to see that the executive leadership team, which have been dominated by men, I think for the whole history of the council, actually in this term of council, that has changed. So that we have women, we have the CEO who's a woman, and we have women on the executive leadership team. So I think that that's obviously a benefit to the council, that we've got a balance there. So I think overall we can say we've improved, but obviously there's further to go. I would say certainly I agree that I think councils have to look very carefully so that women who usually, most of us still carry more, I suppose, load, personal, we usually have more personal responsibilities. Certainly for me, I have, as well as financial. So I think being conscious of that and awareness of that's really important, that for whatever reason, as a society, I think women are still carrying a bit more of the load, and that's one of the reasons that we don't see them so much on council. So I think looking at how, not just sort of wanting to support, but actually looking at what are the practical things that make a difference in terms of women feeling they have the time to be a councillor, because there's no question to do it properly is incredibly time consuming, both in terms of responding to constituents. I mean, in my first Christmas as a councillor, between Christmas and New Year, I got a lot of requests. I got a lot of phone calls from constituents, and I realised that we have a lot of people, older people who live on their own, and between Christmas and New Year, maybe spending a lot of time on their own. So when you think you're having a break, you actually get busier, and they maybe call women more than men. I don't know. But I think the constituent load and trying to respond to everyone, and sometimes we don't manage it, as well as the huge workload around trying to really understand all the paperwork. And I think one of the things there, we do get very good, on the whole, we get really good presentations from the staff. The briefings are very good, and there are just some areas I think where we could help with maybe looking at how the paperwork, so people aren't just swamped, and getting those type presentations is important, including on things like finance, so that councillors don't have to always be wading. I think sometimes I feel like we're wading through things. So that time is really important in terms of women feeling they can do it, I believe. But anyway, thank you for the motion.
Could Deputy Mayor take the chair for a moment?
Yes, certainly, Mr. Mayor. You've got the floor.
Can I just pay a tribute to the three women on this council? Certainly councillors Fernanda and Hollywood for bringing this to us and for also being such strong advocates in your entire time on council. Can I also acknowledge Councillor Brown? Now, it's no secret that Councillor Brown and I have not always seen eye to eye in a few occasions, one or two where maybe we didn't. But in all of the matters you've prosecuted in your time on council, you've been a fierce and formidable advocate. And I thank you for your service to the city. Thank you, councillors. There's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. All right, councillors. I'm going to entertain a procedural motion. I don't think we have any more business, do we, Storm? That those councillors who are leaving us, those councillors who are not recontesting, are invited to say a few words, and then that I, as mayor, because this is the end of the mayoral term, this mayoral term, might just say something in reply. It's moved Councillor Fell, seconded Councillor Christie, that occur. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Do any of the councillors who are leaving us wish to address us? And Councillor Bowling, I note you there on the screen, but who would like to go first?
Okay.
Councillor McGregor has the call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to my fellow councillors for the support you've shown to me over the last, some of you over the last 9 years, 3 months, and I can't remember how many days, very close to a full month. It's been, I think you all agree that the last term has been a roller coaster and sometimes not a pleasant place to be. We've had, we've lived through those that have been on for the 2 terms, two of the worst bushfires that the Blue Mountains and then the country has ever experienced. We've had extraordinary flooding. It's done enormous damage to our infrastructure. We've had the appalling attack on us by the state government, and the even more appalling attack on individuals within council that had considerable impact, not only in career terms but in psychological terms. It left the council, I think, fairly bruised. But despite that, what we've managed to achieve has been extraordinary, and it's been a real honour to be on board while we designed ways to reduce our emissions. We developed this plan of the Planetary Health Centre. We acknowledged the rights of nature, on and on. Quite groundbreaking achievements, and it's been a real privilege to be here for that. In fact, the one thing I envy about leading the council is not being involved in giving form to those great policy decisions, seeing how we can manage the rights of nature and the rights of private property holders at the same time. It's always been a challenge to balance those two things, but it's going to get really serious. So thank you for your support, and I thank the community for re-electing me twice.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor. Councillor Brown, you wish to go next?
No, I'll go last.
Councillor Bowling, do you wish to speak?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Good. Prior to the local government election in 2016, my then recent knowledge of the elected Blue Mountains Council was that it functioned as a uniform and caring body of people that operated in the very best interests of ratepayers and its community in general. For example, the bushfires of late 2013 and the many complications and results resulting from those fires positively reflected upon the efforts of all councillors at the time. As ratepayers at the time, my wife and I were impressed with the performance of our council, and indeed the council staff with whom we had contact. Consequently, having been elected in 2016 on the coattails of Mayor Mark Greenhill, I was very enthusiastic about the opportunity of contributing to our community as a Blue Mountains councillor. But it was not a long time before it became obvious that the cohesive attributes of the previous council were unlikely to be replicated in the new council, and that was disappointing and largely can be attributed to the antics of one councillor. Nevertheless, through sound management by a very professional staff and at significant cost, the council and its elected body did weather the storm and ultimately did achieve much over these past 5 years. It was during my third year as a Blue Mountains councillor that family circumstances caused me to relocate interstate. A decision had to be made as to whether I should resign and cause council a costly by-election and perhaps an imbalance to council allegiances, or continue to work both locally and remotely and thus not disrupt the status quo. I believe I was right to choose the latter. It's been regrettable that COVID-19 prevented me from spending more time locally than was both my intention and strong preference during the past 2 years. I conclude by wishing my Labor colleagues a positive and overwhelming result in the election process this weekend, and I especially wish Councillors Chris van der Klee and Daniel Myers the best of luck in their endeavours for re-election on Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowling. Councillor Fernanda, you have the call. Councillor Brown, would you mind speaking? Councillor Fernanda needs to gather herself. Would you mind having your speech now? Yes, Councillor Brown. That's all right, Councillor Fernanda.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the community for electing me in 2016 and for being such an incredible community to work with. I think the generosity of Ward 1, probably lower down the mountains as well, but my experience, the generosity and the engagement of the community is just phenomenal, and also the expertise. So that's been far more than I expected. It's been an enormous amount of fun. I feel like I've made a lot of friends through the work and really feel part of the community far more than I did 5 years ago. So I'm just grateful for that, and I'm really grateful for the way the community, once you take something up for them, they stick with it as well. And so I appreciate that, and I also appreciate the staff, the many staff, past and present, who have really been willing to take things on, take up change, take up improvement. It's also I think as everyone shares that the desire to conserve this place that we all love. So I'm grateful for the staff. I say that also, although it's not, I mean, I'm still a volunteer and I was a volunteer before I came, but I also say it in terms of the work as a bush care volunteer and as a street care volunteer. I've been really impressed with the staff I've interacted with in those roles, which I will continue to do. I'm just going to say, and I also would appreciate, I know I've put up a lot of notice of motion, run lots of campaigns, and to the annoyance of some around this table, but I realise that the majority of them actually were supported, and I think that it's partly because I think the community were there, they're a bit of a juggernaut on these things as well, but I nevertheless appreciate that. And I've note just go through some of the things that I do think are important that we've been able to make a difference on through that support, and that includes the fossil fuel divestment and sustainable investment policy we now have, the carbon neutral by 2025, as I mentioned earlier, the fact that we are looking at trying to phase out glyphosate with annual reports and research on alternatives, and it hasn't come yet, but also with the staff support the textile recycling trial to try and reduce the massive amount of textiles that go into landfill. I also just want to note one of the early battlegrounds really, but two of them, in fact, saving the Ways Goods building. I'm so grateful that building is there, and I hugely thank the community for that, because that's really was the critical thing, that the Ways Goods building in Liramoor, the oldest wooden building in the commercial strip, is saved. The Katoomba kiosk as well, that was not overdeveloped in the end. So that heritage work, and that was with the work of the Heritage Advisory Committee, and so I absolutely acknowledge them. And I do think that those two campaigns around those buildings, what was wonderful is that the council itself did change the way it approaches its heritage management and restructured where the Heritage Advisory Committee are in the organisation, and that's really made a difference, so that we don't get these long, I don't think we'll get these long battles again. I think the processes are going to be much better. And I do thank the staff and the Heritage Advisory section for that work. I also am pleased that we saved the outdoor pools. Kevin Schreiber and I, Councillor Schreiber and I were both keen on that, but we got there. Old Bell Quarry, Katoomba Airfield, those have been won, those battles, I believe. Community notice board for Medlow Bath, those little things. I'm also grateful for the funding we've recently given to Junction 142. And the Tibetan flag raising, that's another one of those sort of quiet things, but I think that's a really important. It was something important for this council that was new, that I don't think any other council's done every year, and I thank the Mayor for supporting that, seconding that. I'm glad that the Katoomba reference groups have become part of the way the master plan's been approached, and also for the support for Julian Assange. And I haven't got time to talk about work health and safety because my time's going to run out, but we are safe, much safer than we were.
Thank you. Councillor Fernando.
Thanks for support. Wow, it's really hard to do. It's been such an adventure. What can I say? I never, in my wildest dreams, ever imagined that I would enter politics. It's probably the least political of everyone around here, I guess. So coming into this realm was really unexpected. But it's been probably one of the most enriching times of my life to be a part of a process and an organisation that really prizes where they live and what we represent and what's important to people. I've always tried to speak up for, it's always me, it's sort of like always caring for people, caring for the underdog and speaking up, and my kids know that I'm very vocal with things, but to be somewhere that enables me to do that has been here on council and as a councillor. It's it's been such a privilege to be able to speak up for people and to speak up for the environment and to do what's right. I guess I can proudly say that I did maintain my independence, despite many people, thinking that, I'm a Labor stooge or I'm this or that or I'm in a political party. I never was. I maintained my independence, and I've got to say I did put people before anything. But saying that, being with all of you, you embraced me. I look beyond your politics and I look beyond your parties, and I looked at you all individually. And you became a family to me. That's how I see it. And my ward councillors here, you're like my brothers. And I don't care with COVID. I'm clean, I'm negative, I've got my vaccination, but you're like brothers to me. We stuck up for our community, for our ward. And, we always backed each other. And of say I always felt really welcomed here. So it's like leaving a home. And the staff, oh my gosh. You know, like, as just an ordinary resident who doesn't know much about how a city was run, and as I said, I'm not political at all, so I never really took an interest. Sorry, community, if you're listening, but I didn't really. And when I came on board and I saw what you did, each one of you, it blew my mind away that how much effort and love and time and devotion you put into running this city is something that still overwhelms me today, because the work you do really, that's what holds the city together. All of you in Zoom, out here. I can't thank you enough, really, for what you do. And as I can say, it's just been one big adventure. I started off not knowing where I was going to be led to. And I'm walking out knowing that I was part of something that was pretty great. So thank you all. Thank you, thanks, staff.
Well, I think that's the end of the valedictory speeches, so consistent with the motion. As Mayor closing out the term, I might just say a couple of things, because the mayoral term, this mayoral term, comes to an end. I've been in this position before where I think it's proper to round out the term. Firstly, CEO and the ELT and every staff member down below you in the structure of the organisation, on behalf of the governing body, our thanks. Whether we're talking about those workers who are in the street, in the parks, in blue collars or white collars, CEO, on behalf of us all, please accept the thanks of the governing body of 2016. And CEO, your executive leadership team does you proud. Can I thank you for so much, but one particular moment, that is a night when we didn't think we'd be back. You made an elegant speech, an eloquent speech about the importance of local democracy. Had we been gone the next day, probably to your own cost. It was a moment I know every one of us appreciated. We thank you for your leadership and your respect for democracy. Councillors, I'll just talk about those councillors who are leaving now, if I can. There's those who are leaving voluntarily. Some of us may leave involuntarily. I do acknowledge Councillor Fernandez's discussion about us being like a family, because if I had a weird uncle, it would be Councillor Bowling. We all know those weird uncles that come and stay at your house and don't necessarily leave. Well, that's Councillor Bowling, especially after we decided to relocate interstate. Councillor Bowling, I remember our campaign and our election night victory together. I know the family issues that you confronted weighed upon you heavily, but I do want to thank you for continuing to serve the city. You travelled up and down the East Coast to do so, and we had some very late nights and some interesting discussions where we dissected our colleagues and the events of the day. Some of those colleague dissections will remain private between us forever, but they were endlessly entertaining and I can't say always appropriate. But I do remember you at 4 o'clock in the morning, leaving to get to the plane and travel back home, having been in the city for the days prior to serve it. And I thank you very much. You can look back on this time and know that you did your job and you did it well. And I thank you as the Mayor of the city. You're a great bloke and I'm going to miss you. I know that our friendship will remain, but I will miss those nights where we sat there and laughed into the wee small hours. And as I'd be flying to Melbourne, you'd be flying elsewhere the next day, sitting in the early morning at Mascot Terminal drinking coffee after a late council meeting is something I'll always remember. Can I ask you, Councillor Bowling, please, to pass on to your beautiful family my best and warmest wishes. Please let them know that I'm thinking of them, and I thank them for giving you to our city in your service. Councillor Fernanda, just address Joel and Holly, if I may, for a moment. I want both of you to know and to pass on to your family at home that we're very proud of your mum, and I know that you are too. I know that your family at home is as well. Thank you both and to your dad and your other brother for lending your mum to the city during important days in your own lives and your own development. I know that your mum was away doing council work at important times to all of you, and on behalf of the city we thank you for giving her to us for that period of time. Councillor Fernanda, thank you for standing strong in some very difficult times. New to politics, you certainly walked into a very, very political cauldron. I've been on this council for the best part of 20 years and I can't say I've ever experienced a tougher term. And you handled it with dignity, and that is very high praise indeed. Your compassion for your fellow human beings and for animals shone out in the aftermath, most particularly of those awful fires of the Black Summer. You stood strong, and you were a crucial member of a group of councillors who did all they could to confront challenges around the management of asbestos and at the same time keep the elected council intact. Without you, we wouldn't still be here. And on behalf of the city, I certainly want to thank you very deeply for your service. Can I tell you a story about someone who served a term on this council from 1999 till 2004, then due to external circumstances had to leave when he didn't really want to, and gave a similar valedictory to the one you just gave. Well, he came back in 2008. He sits here still and is contesting his 7th election. I don't yet think the end of your chapter has been written, and I rather suspect we might see you again. I certainly hope we do. Councillor McGregor, your family are here tonight, your daughter and your long-suffering wife, who I know would probably relish the thought of having you home a bit more. Can I thank them and for giving you to us, and can I also thank them for the support I know they gave you.
Sorry, I missed that.
Siri, you don't have the call. Can I thank them very much for supporting you in your journey here on council. I know that you and Susie have better things to do now as you enjoy your lives together, but you come from a family, the 2 examples in the room tonight are prime ones, who are very involved in this community. You could not want for better support, and I, saluting you, salute them as well. Look, in a personal way, I've got to say you've been my close confidant in this term on council. You're a friend, but you're also a comrade. And in the tradition from which you and I come, there is no higher praise than to be called very genuinely a comrade. You were with me when the 2013 fires occurred, as was Councillor Vanderclay, when the then district manager said to us 3 that 200 homes were on the ground. He said to us in private that in Victoria, a person had died for every dozen. Turned to me in your presence and said, you do the maths. For at least some hours that night, we believed we were leading a city where we'd lost not only many, many homes, but possibly people as well. And you were with me when there were reports of bodies in a swimming pool that turned out to be animals, and you remember how difficult that was. You were there during the Black Summer fires. Your wisdom around bushfires was something I relied very heavily on in both those terrible times, and I thank you very deeply for that. I know that Councillor Fell, in the context of his community, does so as well, as does Councillor Miles, who was there at the time. The political bushwhackings that the council has experienced from time to time, the attempts to suspend us when it wasn't in any way justified or necessary, were very tough. Some of the commentary, defamatory commentary I received from a certain radio shock jock at that time was very difficult and distracting, and you were a dear friend in helping me get through that, and I thank you very much for it. I know that our friendship and our comradeship will endure way beyond your time here, way beyond. I guess if I could summarise, I think, how can I put this? You're a deeply fine person. I think it's true to say that you've been a deeply fine representative as well. This place for me, and I know for others here, will not be the same without you. And as far as I am concerned, your loss will be felt. I'm going to say that in the words I've just spoken, I also spoke for Susie Van Opdorp, who asked me to speak for us both, because the standing orders don't allow her to do so. But I know that she feels your experience and your leadership and your friendship very keenly in the journey she now takes. And I speak for her and me and all of us, I think. But in saying to you, mate, thank you very much. Your family, like Shay's here tonight, Councillor Fernandez here tonight, have every right to be very proud of you, and I am very proud of you. Councillor Brown. Councillor Brown, you are, sorry, you're going to get this. You are someone who has brought great passion to this chamber. We haven't always agreed, but I've never doubted the strength of your conviction. I've never doubted your incredible work ethic, and I've never doubted that you are someone who speaks her mind with passion and conviction. I do want to wish you all the very best in life. I want to wish you all the best in the journey ahead. I hope the day comes you and I can share a cup of coffee and reminisce with humour. But on behalf of the City of Blue Mountains, as with the other councillors I've spoken of tonight, I thank you for your service to this city and acknowledge it here publicly tonight. Councillors, thank you for a very interesting term. To those councillors who are recontesting, I wish you all the very best. It's my prediction that the gender balance on this next council will be significantly different and for the better. And I do hope that when we come back here in December, we'll remember the contribution of those who were here before us. That's all I've got to say. I think it's now appropriate to unsuspend the standing orders. It's moved. The Deputy Mayor seconded. Councillor Christie was quicker. Standing orders are resumed. Now move to close the meeting. Councillor Fell and Councillor Fernando. All those in favour of closing the meeting? Against? I declare the term of 2016 closed. So, councillors, we're going to repair to another place now to say farewell to each other more informally. So thank you all.
Not in that political sense.
Best wishes to you all. Bye.
Thanks, Darryl.
Best wishes, Darryl. Thank you so much.
Yes, Darryl, thank you very much for all your support, mate. It's been really an honour to work with you for all these years. And you take care down there and look after your family, okay?
Thank you, and I look forward to seeing some of you too.
Yeah, take care, Darryl.